Hello, this is Yogeshwar 7000 again, and I'm back with another very interesting topic on Vedic astrology. And today we'll be talking about certain combinations which could be classified under inauspicious combinations, and we have probably discussed that in our previous videos on a video. If you refer back, I think I've made a video on Gandamula nakshatras, okay, or nakshatra gandanta. So what does gandanta mean? Basically, gandanta is nothing but a junction. So the Gandamula nakshatra is described as such, and there are 6 such nakshatras which are ruled by Ketu and Mercury, and the Gandamula nakshatras are Ashwini, Ashlesha, Magha, Jyeshtha, Moola, and Revati. So these are the Gandamula nakshatras, 6 nakshatras ruled by Ketu and Mercury. And it is believed that a child born in these nakshatras will be unlucky for himself and also to the parents. Now, here is the slight distinction that a child born in these nakshatras will not be inauspicious unless it is at a gandanta or conjunction, or a junction rather. And how it's described is that if the child is born on a junction of a Jala and Agni Rashi, okay, or a fire and a water zodiac sign, only then in that junctions only, if he's born out of these 6 nakshatras, it will be inauspicious. It will be considered to be inauspicious birth. Now, what are these junctions? The junctions are Jyeshtha nakshatra and Moola nakshatra. Also, they are falling in the junction of Scorpio and Sagittarius. Okay, so the Jyeshtha Moola junction, which is also the junction of Scorpio and Sagittarius, and Scorpio, as we know, is a water sign and Sagittarius is a fire sign, there is a problem. So only in the last pada of Jyeshtha and the first pada of Moola, and people who are not familiar with what a pada is, it's please refer to my earlier videos. It's basically 4 equal divisions of a nakshatra. So each pada is 3 degrees and 20 minutes. So the first junction, once again, is the Jyeshtha nakshatra and the Moola nakshatra junction, which is also the junction which appears as a zodiac sign junction between Scorpio and Sagittarius. So a child born in that junction within that last pada of Jyeshtha and the first pada of Moola is considered to be inauspicious. Okay, that's one group consisting of 2 nakshatras. The second group, consisting of 2 nakshatras, once again, is Ashlesha nakshatra and Magha nakshatra. So the last, if the child is born in the last pada of Ashlesha nakshatra and the first pada of Magha nakshatra, that is also considered to be inauspicious for the child and for the parents as well. Okay, and that again falls in the junction of the zodiac sign of Cancer and Leo, and we know that Cancer is a water sign and Leo is a fire sign. That's another junction. And then the third group of 2 nakshatras, where the child, if he's born in that junction of those nakshatras, is Revati and Ashwini, which is also a junction of the zodiac signs of Pisces and Aries. Okay, So we know that Pisces is a water sign and Aries is a fire sign. So that also explains it. And the last pada of Revati and the first pada of Ashwini have to be taken into consideration for this. Okay, so once again, these three groups of 2 nakshatras each, Jyeshtha and Moola. If the child is born the last pada of Jyeshtha and the first pada of Moola, it is inauspicious. Second group, Ashlesha and Magha. If the child is born in the last pada of Ashlesha and the first pada of Magha, it's inauspicious. And I've already explained it through the zodiac sign junction as well. And the third group is the Revati and Ashwini junction, which is the last pada of Revati and the first pada of Ashwini are considered to be inauspicious as far as the child's birth is concerned. Okay, now what does it means if you're born in this nakshatra? I've already discussed that several times in my earlier videos. That look at where moon is placed, and that's going to be determining which nakshatra you were born under. So it has to be considered, taking into consideration the placement of moon. So once again, if moon is placed in the last pada of Jyeshtha and moon is placed in the first pada of, or moon is placed in the first pada of Moola, that is considered to be a gandanta or a junction, which is inauspicious. Similarly, if moon is placed in the last pada of Ashlesha and the first pada of Magha, so if moon is placed in the last pada of Ashlesha or the first pada of Magha, that's inauspicious, and that's because of its junction between these two nakshatras. And if moon in the third group is, and if moon is placed either in the last pada of Revati or in the first pada of Ashwini, because that also forms a junction, or a gandanta as it's called in Sanskrit, that's also considered to be extremely inauspicious to the child and to the parents. So these are what I've just given you a quick recap of the Gandamula nakshatras and also the Gandanta, as you can call it, which is nothing but a junction between these two, or these three groups of 2 nakshatras each, which are also explained through the junction in the Rashi or the zodiac sign which falls. Once again, Jyeshtha Moola falls into the zodiac signs of Scorpio, Sagittarius, once a water sign, once a fire sign. Ashlesha Magha falls in the junction of Cancer and Leo zodiac signs, which is a water and a fire sign. And Revati Ashwini also falls in the junction of the zodiac signs of Pisces and Aries, which is also water and fire. So it can be explained through nakshatras, or it can also be explained through the fact that water and fire don't get along well. So that's why there are problems in these nakshatras. Now, there is something very, very important here, which have been described by the sages. And this flaw or this defect is called the abhukta moola. Okay. So, according to, and there's a slight disagreement here, according to some sages, the 3 groups of 2 nakshatras each come under abhukta moola. All these 3 groups of 2 nakshatras each. But according to certain sages, specific flaw comes under the abhukta moola, and that comes under, which is described as abhukta moola. And by the way, abhukta means which cannot be enjoyed. Okay, so that's the word, the Sanskrit word abhukta moola, and it has been related to just one of these groups out of the three groups. And which group? Jyeshtha and Moola junction. That is called the most inauspicious junction, or a gandanta. Like I said, that's the Sanskrit word for it, out of these three groups which I've just discussed. So it's been described once again that Jyeshtha Moola junction, meaning which, if a child is born in the last para of Jyeshtha or the first para of Moola, meaning which, if moon was placed in the last para of Jyeshtha or the first para of Moola at the time of the child's birth, that is extremely inauspicious, and that flaw is called abhukta moola. So some astrologers even say, well, last para, how will you figure out? It's actually nothing but 3 hours, which is covering that junction. So 1.5 hours in the last part of Jyeshtha and 1.5 hours in the first part of Moola. Or you can just take it as the para, whichever way suits you. So once again, according to some sages, all these three groups of the Gandamula nakshatras, while the gandanta or the junction is happening, are abhukta moola flaws. But according to certain sages, the major flaw occurs when a child is born in the junction of Jyeshtha and Moola, and that is what is called abhukta moola. And these sages have said, once again, they've tried to explain it, why it is inauspicious. As far as Jyeshtha and Moola are concerned, the Lord, or the presiding deity, not the Lord in terms of planet, but the presiding deity of Jyeshtha is Indra, and the presiding deity of Moola is Rakshasa. Okay, so, and there is a major enmity between Indra and Rakshasa, as we know and as we refer from the ancient scriptures and the Puranas, that Indra is always at war with the Rakshasas or demons. So, and that's the reason why whenever there is a junction or gandanta between these two nakshatras in specific terms, which is Jyeshtha and Moola, which means the last para of Jyeshtha and the first para of Moola, if a child is born in either the last para of Jyeshtha or the first para of Moola, it is extremely inauspicious. Why? Once again, because Jyeshtha is ruled by the presiding deity Indra, and Moola is ruled by the presiding deity of Rakshasas, and Indra is very inimical to Rakshasas. So a child born, meaning which, when moon is placed in the last para of Jyeshtha or the first para of Moola, it is very inauspicious, and that forms a flaw called abhukta moola. Okay, so the sages have described that a son or a daughter, they've not, you would have seen that sages generally refer to sons only, but here very clearly the ancient scriptures are mentioning, if a child is born in such junction between Jyeshtha and Moola, which could either be a son or a daughter, that child should be deserted. Okay, if you want to get rid of this dosha. Or they have said that the father should not see the child until 8 years from the birth. And now, after the 8 years, there are certain methods, there are certain pujas, there are certain remedial measures and rituals to be performed, and only then the father can see the child, and this evil can be taken care of. Okay, so of course it does not mean that I'm recommending that a father should desert the child, although it's mentioned in the scriptures. But I guess even the sages mentioned, or meant rather, that it's not desertion, but the father should not see the child for 8 years, and on the 9th year the rituals are to be performed, and then the father can see the child, and that way you can get rid of this evil which happens at birth. So hopefully you did enjoy this video on abhukta, moola, defect or a flaw. And in the meanwhile, I will recommend subscribe to my channel and check out my website. There is a link below, and I will see you with an interesting topic on Vedic astrology very soon. Goodbye.